Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Napkin Numbers with Freeman Lundt. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the importance of your deal team, the folks that are going to help you get your deal across the finish line. There's a lot of seats that go into making a merger and acquisition deal happen, from legal to taxation to financial planning, you name it. We're going to cover each one of those and maybe some alternatives. But most importantly, what you want from your deal team is a bunch of deal makers, not deal breakers. Because if you don't have the deal makers, the folks that can be flexible and nimble to tackle challenges as they come up, because they will come up. Don't care how strong you think your deal is, stuff's going to happen. Those deals don't close. And so, Scott, why don't you kick us off with one of your top advisors around the table that are necessary?
Oh yeah, yeah. This will be a boring one because we're just going to put down lists of people, and you just got to write them down because you're going to need all these people. Well, actually, so we have like really two different categories. We've got the people that we see all the time on deals, and then we got a group of people that we see sometimes on deals. And you have to think about your own specific transaction on, or this is that kind of a person of advisor for me? And if they are, have them there. If the deal doesn't work, if you talk to Joe, your neighbor, and he says, I wouldn't do it, and then you wouldn't do the deal, whether you're a buyer or a seller, that's an advisor for you. So, I think one of the most common in advisor that sits around the table that people go, oh, yeah, I should have that, is your tax advisor, right? It's somebody that's going to understand all the complex ins and outs of the deal for you. And you may have somebody, if you're a seller, you've got a business. You may have somebody separate that does your personal taxes. Either way, you're going to want to ask them, can you handle merger and acquisitions or an M&A transaction? And if they can or they can't, then you'll know if you need to expand your team. If they can't do it, we've had those situations where we've had somebody that had three different advisors for tax. One did their business. They had a separate person do personal, and then they had another person that did the transaction because the other two said, we're not comfortable doing this M&A transaction. So if you have one, two, or three people for it, whoever you need for your tax advisor, really important because they're going to help you to be more efficient, either in the sale or in structuring the purchase of the business. Who goes along with that? Is somebody that does the financial statement preparation. So this comes up a lot. You'd be amazed. Most of the time they say, who's your tax advisor? I got a CPA, and they move on. But whoever's preparing financial statements is huge. If we're on a sell side advisory and you have a team and you say, oh yeah, Mary does my bookkeeping. Perfect. Can I get information from her? No, because she's married to the foreman. And if she doesn't know about the sale, and if you call her and she gets your email address, she's going to say, oh my God, are you selling? And then the foreman says, oh, I think I'm going to lose my job, and he quits. So you don't want that. Or they might have their CPA that does it, right? Or it might be somebody internal, external. These are things you need to ask about. Who prepares the financial statements and how to get around that? We've had situations where it's an internal bookkeeper. Bob does the books internally, but because they don't want them to know about the sale, they have a really good CPA that in turn asks the question for the sell side advisor. So structuring that appropriately and getting either the team ahead of time or understanding how to run that process is important.
Yep, those are two really good ones. Another one to add in there that I think everybody's gonna say, "Oh yeah, I should have that," is your legal advisory, right? Both sides, sale, and the buyer. Attorneys range in all kinds of different sectors of business, right? You don't want to have a bankruptcy attorney repping you on an M&A transaction, or vice versa. So like Scott mentioned earlier, having M&A specific experience, an M&A specific attorney that this is what they do every day. They understand how to legally put bookends around risk, minimizing risk, whether you're the seller or the buyer on this transaction is extremely important. It's too many deals have gone, across the finish line. And once I didn't have proper legal advisor, and we've seen this happen, and they really get burned after the fact. If you're buying a company that does a lot of government work, government contracts, understanding how those transition to you, if they will transition to you. Some of them have, clauses in there that say, well, if there's a new owner, even if you're doing a stock purchase, new ownership gives us the ability to eliminate or terminate this contract. And maybe that's 50% of the revenue of that business. Well, that is not a good situation to walk into. So legal is another crucial one. One that kind of goes with that, managing risk, insurance, having the right insurance person at the table. Same thing. They're managing risk for you, similar to an attorney. An attorney structuring stuff. Well, so is the insurance agent structuring, helping you structure, whatever they need to do in that transaction from an insurance perspective to minimize risk for you and make sure you're covered. Key man policies, all kinds of other things that go into that to cover your butt in case, what hits the fan.
You know what else insurance agents do? They do financial products, man. And which, hey, there's all different types of instruments, financial instruments. Your insurance agent or broker, they could also do financial products. And on top of that, another category that goes with that is your financial advisor. They also have financial products. So, one of the key advisors that we find when you're on the sell side is having a really strong financial advisor. When somebody's getting ready to sell, one of the holdups that they have psychologically is, okay, if I stop doing this that I've been doing for the last X amount of decades, can I live the life that I want to live? When I close my eyes and I think of retirement, it's a lifestyle. And that financial advisor is going to put numbers to that in inflation and say, based on what you want to do every single day for the rest of your life for the next 20, 30 years, you're going to need to have this much money. And we found a little bit over here, a little bit over here. How much is your business worth? When somebody doesn't understand their longevity planning or how much money that they need set aside or what kind of returns they need, or if they don't have a strong financial advisor, then that decision to sell, the timing of it gets a little bit more of that gray area where you say, I don't know, maybe I should just keep working because I've been showing up to the office, the exact same office, and I know that I make money doing this job. When you have a really strong financial advisor that says everything's going to be okay and let me show you why it's going to be okay with all the things you have, then that switch hits. And what we see is clients that go, okay, I'm ready for retirement. Now, of course, they work hand in hand with other advisors to make sure it's more efficient with like your CPA for taxes or estate planner. But that financial advisor is a very crucial piece for somebody that's stepping out of their business and wanting to do something else.
Finance being the key word there. Bankers,
Yeah.
finance person, your brokers, whoever that financier is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wealth management office. I mean, you name it. Even as a seller too. I mean, you think it might fall primarily on a buyer because you got to figure out if you can get qualified and actually buy the business with, financing, but the seller too. Sellers, going to your finance person and saying, hey, is my company bankable? How much is it bankable for? Helps also set realistic expectations at the table. A good finance person is going to be able to tell you, hey, here's what it's going to equate to from a number standpoint, financing wise. Doesn't mean that that's necessarily what you sell it for because structure plays a part of that. There's a lot of ways to put it together. But having the financier that understands how these transactions work and how to move them across the finish line again smoothly and efficiently, extremely important because if there's no money at the table, there's not a ton of cash buyers out there paying millions of dollars in cash for businesses. High percentage of them are financed. And if you're a buyer, you better have that figured out before you start making any offers. And as a seller, you should understand what your company can finance. Because if it can't finance much, then the buyer's going to ask you to be the bank and expect you to carry a bunch of paper, which is very risky. And your legal advisor is probably going to advise you not to do something like
that. And that steps into another one we see a lot on usually Main Street businesses. So you're thinking like 5 million and less in enterprise value, is having real estate advisors. So generally in that size, there may be a component for real estate, either having a residential or commercial real estate agent. With every deal, we're going to have some kind of a lease or some kind of a sale that happens. So that's another key person to have if there's real estate involved. You know what I've been seeing a lot of lately, Rahsaan? Business consultants. That was, I think earlier on when we started, we didn't see a lot of business consultants, but that and exit planners, those two categories, they're separate, right? Some might put them together, but we've seen those in the last couple of years as somebody says, hey, I've got this business consultant or coach that's been helping me get ready for a sale. We've seen exit planners do something parallel where they help them get ready for a sale, but they're helping them in that transition planning of going from I'm in the business, I'm into retirement. So they do a little bit different things, but those two categories are things that we're starting to see more of. Um,
Those are, yeah. And those are,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say estate planners too. That wasn't something that was, a decade ago, even though it should have been a lot of people's radars is when they're planning the exit. But we're starting to see more people go through this planning phase. So they're starting to have this longer runway to sale that was probably influenced by that bump in interest rates because all of a sudden it became like a buyer's market. Sales prices were getting depressed. And so they said, well, I already know I want to sell. I'm just not getting the money. So I might as well start planning for this. And we started seeing more of, hey, I've set up an estate now. Or, hey, I've done this and now I'm doing this planning. So that's probably leaning a lot into of why we're seeing more of these type of advisors more recently.
We can talk at length about all kinds of folks at the table. We'll end with some of the ones that you don't necessarily see all the time. If Scott, you want to mention some of those?
Yeah, alternative investments. This is one we don't see a lot of, but they do pop up. Is if you've got real estate, or if you're doing like an ESOP or something, you'll start seeing exchanges like a 1031 exchange or a 1042 or DST. Real estate syndication has become a bigger thing recently. And then circling all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, other advisors we've seen in this category is spouses, family members, business associates, friends, neighbors, anybody that is important to you that you would rely on for their decision. If they said yes or they said no and it would influence you, have them be part of your conversations.
And with that, we're going to wrap this episode up. We appreciate you joining us and hearing about important advisors at the table on acquisition deals. And if you like what we had to say, hit the like and subscribe button, and looking forward to chatting with you on the next episode.